The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program, and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
Well, hello. Welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip.
And I'm CJ.
And it is Monday in the Riv. And again, we lead with Commander COVID.
Commander COVID on deck. Okay, the state numbers were 114,398, with new cases being 303. Total deaths was 8,607. with new deaths being 13. The state no longer provides the county numbers, and the city numbers are as of Friday at 1,863 with 119 total deaths. The city no longer provides the numbers over the weekend. I think that might be because it was becoming expensive for the city to keep doing, to have people on for overtime and whatnot, but that's something that the mayor would have to answer. I know people were a little upset that they're not getting the numbers, but they'll muddle through, I guess.
Well, obviously, you all know what happened this weekend. We were classified in one classification, then they complained and got it lowered. And the thing that disturbs me about that whole scenario was that, you can't have your cake and eat it too, I guess, unless you're a politician. Then you can have your cake, everybody else's cake. You can eat it and still complain about not having cake, because they complained about the false positives. So on one hand, they use all those false positives to justify locking you in your house, closing businesses, destroying the economy. And then on the other hand, when they don't work in their favor for their dictatorial regimes, they say, yeah, you can't, these numbers are all off because we got a ton of false positives. Well, why are we bothering at all? If we're going to have a lot of false positives, that has to be, as far as I'm concerned, factored into the decision-making policies of closing the businesses. What we should be looking at least in my opinion, and you would have probably an opinion with greater weight since you're a medical professional. But as far as I'm concerned, we have to look at hospitalizations and deaths, because the hospitalizations and deaths are an absolute indicator that we have some serious cases of COVID, because we know there are a lot of cases of COVID that are not very serious. So, this whole thing to me is just, it's political. There's an election coming up, and the COVID virus and the handling of said COVID virus is the fundamental foundation of the Democratic platform. So that's just my spin on this thing. So it's my opinion. So, because as far as I'm concerned, 80% or 50% false positives on different types of testing only indicates that these tests are not that reliable, and you can't use them as a justification for anything. And what you should be looking at is hospitalizations and deaths. There's no more positive indicator than that.
Well, what's interesting is the fact that, the mayor stopped doing weekend numbers right after the state had declared us a red zone. Then the mayor fought diligently to be declared a yellow zone again, and he got that designation. And then he stops reporting over the weekend. And he claimed that it was all false positives. Well, if there were false positives, why wasn't the counts adjusted? Because the counts haven't been adjusted. But every time there was a false positive before, it was one false positive. Boom, we lost one in the count. Or it was one person reporting from a different city, we lost one in the count. But all these false positives now are is not affecting our count. So I have a problem there. It looks kind of fishy. But the other thing is, how many cases does it take for the mayor to realize it's time to stop all the public bull? I mean, you've got 50, 60 people playing basketball at one time. No masks, no social distancing, nothing. You've seen it, I've seen it, and so many others have seen it. Then you've got the mayor holding a drive-in, okay, where, as I've said before, the rules say clearly you must stay in the vehicle. It says must stay in your vehicle. But the mayor's press release says, oh, bring a blanket, bring your chairs, sit outside. That's not the way the rules read, Mr. Mayor. Go read the rules yourself. They're available online. If I can find them, so can you. And these are the things that we got to talk about, because those are things that spread the virus more. And I firmly believe that we are in a red zone. I firmly believe we are in a hot zone. And if maybe the numbers aren't showing it, and I say this lightly, maybe the numbers aren't showing it, but I think the numbers are going to show it. And I think that the mayor needed that yellow zone because he needs to justify opening up the schools. And if we're in a red zone, the rules say you cannot open the schools. So as long as he can keep the state keeping us as yellow, he can reopen the schools. And that's an important factor for him and for many other people. And I think that's something that we also need to look at. Are we truly in a red zone or not? And that's a serious question to ask. And maybe I'll send an email over to Sutters and find out what they say, because I find it hard to believe that the state would make that much of a big mistake. I really do.
Well, isn't it amazing that Fall River continues on its endless quest for mediocrity? We're not trying to get into the green zone. We're fighting like hell to be in the yellow, being in the mediocre zone. And you're right, CJ. This thing is extremely disturbing. People have been suffering very bad for a long time. People couldn't go to the gyms. People couldn't live their life even even partially the way they wanted to live them. And they were using all these numbers. And then on one hand, they're using it, and that's government. But it's ironic. We're talking about, telling people and manipulating things. And I had a little conversation with you over the weekend, and I was telling you that I was up at Home Depot picking up a couple items and swapping over my propane tank. And a couple people were talking about the water rates going up, and they were livid and talking about how, this is ridiculous. Nobody cares about the taxpayers. And then I took, it's our job to try to keep the public informed. That's what we do on this show. We try to give them so I informed them about the move to change the ordinance to allow landlords to have to pay the fines for something the city never really enforced, when the city had the responsibility. But now you can be damn sure they're going to enforce it because they need money. And of course, that started an entire new, level of outrage. And when I heard that, and then they even got into somebody else walked up, and it was kind of like a town meeting. And then somebody walked in and said, I got fined $300 for not cutting my grass. You think maybe that the city would tell people that they're sending DCM people out to tag people for using plastic bags and enforcing laws they never enforced because they're desperate for money? It shows a lack of compassion and an insensitivity to the people in the city of Fall River. Under the cover of darkness, they're sending these people out to get money because they're trying to bleed a rock. The fact is they're going to raise the water fees, they're going to raise the taxes, and everybody doesn't live in the North End and make six figures in this city. As a matter of fact, most of the people in this city do not. We know that we have, if not the lowest, one of the lowest household and per capita incomes in the state of Massachusetts. I would have to go back and double check again to make the statement that we're the lowest again, as we were, because I would have to check to see if one of the other bastions of poverty in his state has overtaken us for the cellar. We're kind of like the Red Sox, at the bottom, less than 300 winning percentage. So the fact is that people are not happy, and it's kind of a paradox for me. It's like it bothers me to see people who need it the most get victimized the most. The poor, the people who have to work for two jobs to even make ends meet, and there's a total disregard for these people. They don't get to go to spend a weekend in Chatham. They're lucky if they can spend a weekend in Tiffin. But it disturbs me. But then again, in a way, this is encouraging. I see the level of anger rise like it did during the recall. We may be able to get these people to drain the swamp. And I'm ecstatic over that prospect. So I had to get that one in because I thought it was rather ironic that we ended up with virtually a town hall in the middle of Home Depot parking lot. But that's the way it is. People are living, and then of course when somebody says, "Oh, I got a $300 fine because my grass was too high," well, how do you know that person in those houses are elderly? It's been humid as hell for weeks. You want them to go out and cut their grass when the feel-like temperature is 100 degrees, so they can have a heart attack or get dehydrated and die? You think you'd warn them? You think you'd give them a warning? First, cut your grass. It's not really grass anyway, they're weeds, because grass isn't growing much because of the heat. But it's just ridiculous how this city, they just do things. They don't warn you. You better feed your meter, because they're like vultures waiting for that thing to tick, so they can give you a ticket in your trash, which you didn't get for the past 10 years. And if you did, you never paid it. But now you can be damn sure they're gonna come after you. They're gonna come after you for every single thing they can to get every single dime they can. But they won't get rid of their automatic cost of living raises. They won't get rid of their giant pay raises. But they'll take all your money.
Well, you're right. And that's the sad part about it. It just keeps getting worse and worse for the people. Now, if you read the Weekend Flush, which I'm sure you did, you'll notice that I said that we got some great information this week from elections and I got a copy of the statement from corporate counsel that we can now collect signatures electronically. And I'm looking at the two companies that have been provided to me by the elections office that does this. And we will see if we can start the petitions for a forensic audit, an underride, and what else? What else do we want?
Yeah.
The CPA be gone. CPA be gone. And see if we can get those signatures, see if we can get people to sign those petitions and make it happen, because that's what needs to happen. It needs to happen. And if it doesn't happen, we have a problem. And that's where the big issue happens. Because if the people really want to see change and they want to affect change, then they have to take part in making it happen. Because sitting back and resting, saying, "Oh, somebody else will do it," doesn't work. because if everyone does that, nobody does anything. And that does just work.
That's true. And we saw that when we had the recall. It began to gain momentum. People were sick and tired of it, and people are beginning to get sick and tired of being bludgeoned over the head in every single direction. And what they better realize, and we will continue to remind them, this year is going to pale by comparison to next year. Next year is going to be worse than this year. They're going to come in with the premature implementation of the debt override that they swore on a stack of Bibles wouldn't be April 23. Last time I checked, what year is this?
This is fiscal year 21.
Now we know fiscal year, but I mean it's the year 20 and fiscal year 21, which makes next fiscal year what?
22.
So that isn't 23. Is 2 the same as 3? I don't think so. So a year in advance, they're not only going to hit you to the max 2.5, they'll raise your water rates again next year, and they'll throw in, just to make it a little sweeter, a debt override, unless you get out there, sign the petitions, and take some of your money back. That CPA is a disgrace, always has been a disgrace. We opposed it when they proposed it. We continue to oppose it. And we might as well throw the charter into that mix, too, because that's another disaster. So we're going to be working. We're going to be looking for these. We're going to be looking at it. And as I said, this public meeting was unsolicited. I just happened to be getting my propane cylinder when they were complaining, and of course, it's always nice to hear what the public has to say. We're not going to sneak up on people, but people are really upset. The general public is not happy. The people who live in the 3 deckers and stuff like this, and people are running for the hills, and rents are going to go up. And then what's going to happen? People are not going to pay their rent. We're going to have eviction issues. Then we're going to have homeless issues because, I mean, we keep piling this on. How can you expect a landlord to absorb all these costs? Really? And how are you going to make that stick? I hope the court, if they do change that ordinance, everybody who votes for that ordinance to make landlords pay when they didn't enforce it for over a decade. I hope it gets challenged in court. I hope it goes down in flames, because this is just outrageous. It's just outrageous.
Yeah, and when you see that the water rate increases and how much it's going to hurt the homeowner on a fixed income. They worked all their life to pay for their home. They don't have a mortgage. They don't have anything, and now they're robbing Peter to pay Paul to pay for water and sewer rates. And then on top of that, they've got to raise the stormwater fee $2. Why? Why? How did that have to go up? Why? Because it's a money grab. That's how it goes up. And everything this mayor's been doing is a money grab. It seems like it just keeps getting worse and worse. And, the mayor may say it's not him personally, but guess what? It's your administration. It is you personally. That is you. And you have to accept that. Your administration is the one that proposed the water rate increases. Your administration is the one that proposes the taxes. Your administration is the one that proposes the budget. It's you, Mr. Mayor. The buck stops with you, and you have to remember that the buck stops with you. And all of these increases, people are not going to be happy about. So come election time, they won't forget this. Believe me.
And then the city employees are looking to pick their pockets for health care again. Health care doesn't cost any more than it did 10 years ago, and they're going to look to take it out and just try to disguise it. And that's what disturbs me. Let me make this perfectly clear. This is what really disturbs me about this, because it's the absolute misrepresentation of fact. They are going to go and try to tell the council, like they did in 12, that they're saving money on health care. They're not saving anything. The health care cost will be exactly the same. The only difference is they're going to shift the cost like they did for nearly 9 million in 12. They're going to try to shift another 6 million in addition to people who work for the city and stay in the city. And they complain about people not remaining in the city employees. Well, you tax them, you fine them, you raise their fees, you never stop. And then on top, because they're city employees, you steal more money for health care. And at the time, as you said, the mayor can say what he wants. But I have not seen the mayor eliminate automatic cost of living raises for our highest paid administrators and the highest paid positions in the city. I haven't seen him eliminate that. I haven't seen him call a press conference and say, I'm having a moratorium on everything, cost, pay, incremental pay increases for these people, automatic cost of living increases for these people. And I'm looking to streamline government, to lower the cost of government and keep some money in the taxpayer's pocket. No, all they know how to do is take it under the guise. They're not going to tell the city council, but I'm going to tell the city council that this is not a cost savings. This is a cost shift. And it's shifted to the people who are already paying higher water fees, higher property taxes, and getting fined because they got somebody walking around with a tape measure, measuring their grass and looking through their ballots. But yet, when the city was commissioned to do this, they didn't do it. But now that it needs money, DCM should be doing DCM work. They should not be the trash and grass Nazis. That's not what they're here for. They're here for community maintenance. We had trash enforcement officers. Where are they? They've gone to Valhalla, where all the warriors go.
Well, yeah, and you know, as you said about DCM, they should do DCM work. Well, DCM work, I don't believe, is the parks. That's not the parks. The park department's supposed to be handling the parks. The park department's supposed to be handling the cemetery, but DCM is doing that. And for some reason, somehow or another, parks came under the DCM umbrella when it was never supposed to be there under the law. It's supposed to be under its own umbrella. It's supposed to have its own budget, and the park board is supposed to handle that. But again, let's not fix it. Let's just keep doing it, keep our head down, keep our mouth shut, and everything will stay the same. But just like when Chris Gallagher turned around and said, "Oh, well, I backfilled my budget with CPA money." It's been videotaped. It's been videoed. And guess what? He kept his head down, kept his mouth shut, and everyone forgot about it.
Which, by the way, is illegal. Which, by the way, is illegal. That's not what CPA money is for. So it's illegal. But as you said, DCM. But what does government do? We've said it before. They throw money at it and raise taxes for their incompetency. You brought up a great point, parks and grounds. Why does the school department have a whole bunch of people in the school department being paid for that? They have building maintenance. The city ordinance says that DCM is in charge of maintenance of all city buildings, which include school buildings. Why isn't the park department cutting the grass at the schools? Why do we need an entire department? Why do we need a separate treasurer? Why do we need CFOs? Why do we need all this stuff when we have people being paid? It's a hell of a lot cheaper to have one person do it. Okay, they're going to have a little bit more. But doesn't the entire city budget include the school department budget, CJ? Am I wrong in that assumption? It does.
That's what I thought.
Why can't the auditor and the treasurer and the CFO on the city side, since when they go to the budget hearings, they're responsible for the budget in its entirety? Why don't they just take that on? Maybe then you could justify some of these massive pay raises. So, okay, now they're doing the whole school side, which gets the largest segment. You know, there are more school teachers than any other occupation in the city of Fall River. And, you know, it's a big budget, but you have a superintendent, and he's a department head, pseudo, de facto. different title, but he's a department head, like the fire chief and the police chief and the head of DCM. They get paid to administer their departments. So why can't they submit a budget and then have the people who are paid on the city side? It's just like group insurance. It's group. It's a group insurance. And the school department is part of it. So why did we evolve or devolve to where we have somebody in charge of building and grounds at the school department? We have all these other jobs that they created. Why? Give the politically connected people nice big fat paychecks.
And that's exactly what's happening. Those are all politically connected people. And, you know, I can call them out by name, and I can tell you right now, some of them have jobs that in no way, shape, or form qualified for, but they're doing them anyhow. And that's the problem with the school department. It is the political dumping ground, and nobody fights it. Nobody. You want to do some cuts? Start getting rid of duplicate positions. Start doing away with positions that do absolutely nothing. Then maybe we'll start seeing a smaller budget and some savings for the taxpayer. But again, too much to ask for, because our political friends need to keep their political jobs to make their six-figure salaries doing absolutely nothing.
Yes, and of course, get their preferential treatment on zoning and things like that. We all know that. We see it every day. We've seen it, and the only way to cure that is to replace the people. And as I said, it's kind of a yin and a yang here. We have this, and I'm really disturbed on what's happening with the people, and how much burden they're putting on a community that has these people have very little in the way of financial resources. That's the majority of people in the city. And for some unknown reason, maybe because I was always involved in a union and I've always dealt with trying to get people, a livable wage while people were getting $40,000 pay raises, and they're begrudging people, an adequate pay raise. Maybe it's my perspective, but to me, it's incredible to think that you can be a city councilor or a mayor and live in this community and not realize that this community is poverty-stricken. What was the last statistic on how many people were in the school lunch program? You remember?
Well, now it's everyone. The city went to providing free lunch to everybody.
Yeah, but before that, when it was people supposedly only had the need for it, it was what, 80%?
Something like 80%, yes.
Yeah. So I mean, and we all know, and they admit to the fact that maybe these kids, if it wasn't for school, wouldn't get food.
And that's why when they closed the schools this year, they turned around and they had food distribution, lunches distributed at the parks, and they were also distributing dinners and breakfast items for the next day. So that shows you that how much is necessary.
Yet on that same thing, they do that, and I don't understand how there's a disconnect there. Yet on the next hand, they have this blasé attitude about dumping taxes on everybody. No, water fees, don't worry about it. The landlords are going to handle it. Well, these people don't have money to pay their rent. There's a dramatic effect on everybody. It's just not right. And I see we're running low. So, but everybody keep getting angry and getting angrier, because we got an election in November. The following November, it's their turn in the bucket, and let's make them hold them accountable.
That's it. Hey, everyone, thanks for watching. It's great to be in your home with you. Remember, stay healthy, stay safe, and stay angry.